You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
On January 7th, President Donald Trump called me to ask me if I was okay. I sleep every night with a framed picture of the late, great Justice Anton Scalia by my bedside. I helped bring Halliburton public. I was denied an internship at OANNNKNKKK News or whatever because my views were considered too envelope pushing. Direct quote. I have said things in closed-door meetings that have made Pinochet blush. That is how conservative I am. I am so conservative, I genuinely enjoy 1930s German polka music. I am so conservative that there are certain people that I like in the sound of music that most people tend to think are the villains in the show. I think the border wall is taking our jobs because my daddy and his daddy before him and his daddy's daddy, and you understand the rest, were proud border wall builders. Not no fence, wall, boy. That's how conservative I am. I lobbied to have the metal detectors removed from this year's NRA convention. I think Milo Yiannopoulos is a straight man, and I think Marjorie Taylor Greene has some good points. That's how conservative I am. I still go to the Boston Tea Party meetings, and I'm organizing this year's fun run. That's how conservative I am. Now, why do I rehash this? Why do I brag and state, clearly not stunting, all of the things you know to be true about my character and essence as a human being? Well, because, I like to hear myself talk. This has been me with the evening news. But recently, a friend of mine from college, which is an awful, truly horrific way to start or preface any story, a friend from college, that is, because starting a story that way is something that a very specific type of white loser does. Friend from college. It's the same type of person that at some point or another has liked Matt and Kim's music, for a minute, regardless of how old they were, where they were. At some point, they probably thought, this ain't that bad. It's kind of inspiring. That's the equivalent of starting a friend from college, because it's said with like a friend from college, get ready for this story about this quirky, crazy person from my past that we have this uncountable amount of memories that we've bonded over, which allow me to tolerate your bullshit regardless, but you already knew that. I'm going to wrap up this entire sentiment with the term, my friend from college. It's like this patch of words that is supposed to be all-encompassing for why you were pretty shoddy at picking friends for a period in your life. Don't hold it against me. I'm just kidding. There's an algorithm to this. I don't mean what I'm saying, but I say all of it to say. A friend of mine from college apparently listens to the podcast, which is great. I'm glad she does. I want all of you to listen to the podcast. Unfortunately, she uses Spotify to listen to the podcast, which she should stop doing, and anyone who does should also stop doing as well, because those Swedes are onto something. But she listened to the last podcast, which wasn't a full episode. It was just one of the brief breaking news ones because, news had broke. So that's why I have breaking news episodes. You can connect those dots. I would imagine good old-fashioned police work. You'll see what I mean. But she listened to the last episode where I was talking about Roe v. Wade being overturned. And for those of you unaware, the episode is called Inseminating Opinion 2. Is it maybe one of the best names of anything ever in the history of things that required naming? Yet to be foreseen, but it is in the running. Now, needless to say, this former pink-haired girl with a nose ring, I'm not sure currently its status, big heart, genuinely cares, but also is truly and most literally at one point a caricature of the city of Portland. She thought I was wrong. She thought I don't know what I'm talking about. LOL, you're so full of shit emoji. So I anticipated some of that. I understand that's going to happen. When you share opinions or conclusions you've arrived at based on hundreds of years of recorded medical history, logic, reason, philosophy, deduction, or rational thinking, I understand some people are going to disagree because what legs do you have to stand on if not those things? So I get it. And if anyone was going to disagree with what I said, which was completely, full of shit evidently based on everything, I would expect it to be her. That makes sense. She was supposed to. In fact, it would almost be a little weird if she was someone who completely agreed with me immediately. I, at that point, would probably think I am having too much of an effect as a charismatic thought leader, and someone should stop me before the cult really takes off. But, no hard feelings. I didn't really care that much that she was that wrong, because you learn to live with people being wrong, and you learn to decide when you should tell them if they're wrong or not. I would argue that's a hallmark characteristic of maturity, knowing when not to tell people they're wrong. And I can assure you, I am not at all close to that at all. I am very much immature, very much petty, very much want to be right, very much am correct, and you are wrong. And I didn't share all this, which is why I've decided to do a thinly veiled, anecdote where I'm clearly just venting how I feel now to everyone I have access to. But it revealed to me, it highlighted how people's political ideologies probably isn't even a good or qualified enough word for what it is at this point. But everyone's beliefs or political beliefs, and I know, hot take, I don't think they're real. I think everyone's full of shit. I don't think they're their actual beliefs. I think they may be someone else's that they heard. They may be someone that they heard share these things that they thought was cool, that was maybe dressed in an ensemble that they themselves wish they owned, that maybe was in a movie that they really liked, maybe had their hair done in such a way that really, did something to their genitalia. But the one thing they're not based on is logic or reason or any other additional thoughts. You know what I mean? It's almost like everyone's political belief nowadays are not so much a belief, it's so much they know what beliefs of others they know they don't like. And there's something to be said for understanding what you don't like. That is important. You should know that about yourself and how it applies to the situation. But I think you should actually have some legs to stand on, perhaps. I think you should actually believe something. I think you should actually use your noodle. I think most people's beliefs or set of most people's creed, thoughts about life, leanings towards things, I think are truly based on fucking nothing. I think it's based on, well, have I heard people I think are lame say this shit? Have I heard people who I think are dorks say something like this? If it's anything like that, and I kind of associate it with those dorks in my head, I am on the other side of that, and that's it. I will do no additional thinking. Thank you very much. I will not allow contradictory information or evidence in my head. I have officially closed my head, ears, and mouth off. Thank you very much. I will now commence digging a hole in the sand for which I will put my head deeply and thoroughly in to never return from again. I think people are lacking beliefs. You might feel like you had a very passionate reason to be stirred with emotion following Roe v. Wade being overturned, but if you do a little reading, if you actually read the actual effects in this country that will now happen, the states where you could get an abortion, you could actually get it an easier way now. The ones where you couldn't, but they're still Greyhound. That's not something I would argue is worth rioting in the streets for. And I would like to think if more people knew that was the actual stakes here, they would probably agree with me. But just because they heard someone say that it's kind of hard to argue against the fact life might begin when a zygote is formed, that is now something I've heard somebody in my head say who wears white Nike Monarchs and denim shorts still. So therefore, that's a dork. That's not my affiliation. You're a pro-lifer, LOL. I'm trying to share thoughts and ideas, stir the people, be a thought leader, and eventually have a cult of my own. Or at the very least, have a mediocre CBD or subscription underwear company pay my fucking rent. But I ain't going to lie to myself about facts or opinions. I'm actually going to challenge myself. I think I'm genuinely someone who, more than average, is open to ideas in good faith. I will change my mind a lot. And that's not because I have some intellectual capability that you do not have. It's because I'm a half-stepping moist-ass bitch who is easily convinced, gullible, and trusts people, probably to a fault. But when I get a reaction to me in earnest presenting an opinion or a conclusion that I arrived at based on me honestly and objectively doing the scientific deduction required, and your opposition is reduced to a text message containing multiple emojis, I would argue you haven't done your homework. I would argue your set of so-called beliefs are simply a collection of beliefs that you have in opposition of those you wouldn't want to fuck at a party. I would say if you look like a conservative, if you're a divorcee, if you're a Midwestern housewife who's approaching 300 pounds, whose husband eats frozen Eggo waffles while he waits for the ones in the toaster, if you're that type of physically conservative, I would say, get at me. Republicans buy sneakers and them titties ain't conservative. How about that for progressive? All right, I don't need to keep rehashing Roe v. Wade because we already did and the country's burning because of it. But I just wanted to point out that some people be wrong. And I will not break social norms when I correct you. I will then share how wrong you are and how foolish your thinking is publicly to thousands of people later. Because I would have liked to have thought that our liberal arts education, our degree, the value of which is intrinsically intangible, as is the value of snake oil, but that's something for a different story. I would have liked to have thought that liberal arts education gave you the tools, gave you the myriad of knowledge and exposure to different ways of thinking and logic to help you arrive at conclusions, or at the very least assess ones that others have done the homework for and now are presenting. But alas, debates are still limited to rebuttals involving emojis as we approach our 30s. No reason to be alarmed by that. So instead, let's go back to the well of China. Now, Joe Biden is a fucking liar. His son, Hunter, is a crackhead who married his deceased brother's wife, and they're currently together till this day. He's also a forgetful klutz who leaves his laptop full of crimes behind at a repair store in Delaware. Now, this laptop has still, to my knowledge, not been physically located, despite every other media outlet reporting on new information on it. The latest, of course, is the voicemails that prove Joe Biden, despite long periods of complete and utter senility, still has sporadic moments of intense clarity and criminality. Case in point, the revelation, thanks to voicemails found on Hunter's laptop, the infamous laptop, and voicemails, fucking voicemails, I'll say it again, voicemails found on his laptop. These people, these members of the first crime family of America's white trash Delaware idiots, create ways to get caught. It's like they're going out of their way to think, hold on, before I leave the scene of the crime, how else could I leave a clue I did something wrong? I have an idea. How about I go out of my way to take time to transfer voicemails from my phone to my computer? That's so wild to me, but I digress. So, Joe Biden, during the campaign he was running for office and several times since being in office, has vehemently denied having ever, under any circumstances, having any knowledge of his son Hunter's business dealings with China. In this instance, a Chinese oil company. Now, Hunter, in case you have forgotten, if you don't keep up with his life, he leads a very fascinating life. Apart from successfully being on crack all the time and marrying his dead brother's sister, he is a successful painter. He is a successful painter who is frequently asked to come overseas to meet with companies in the Ukraine, like Burisma, or a Chinese oil company, because we love your work. We love your watercolors. We have no idea that you're the president's son, and we have no intentions to give you any type of money to help, maybe leverage some favors over across the pond back in America. That has nothing to do with anything. We just want to buy some of your paintings. All of that's been blown wide open thanks to new information on the laptop, like the voicemails where Joe Biden literally, despite claiming to have never discussed, very clearly calls his son to say that he is in the clear. Now, you might say, in the clear, Colin, that's circumstantial. That's projection. You have no idea if that means anything in reference to China. Well, that just means you haven't actually listened. That also might mean you might be a friend of mine from college. Let me do you the actual voicemail verbatim so I don't misquote, so you, for yourself, can hear the words the president left on a crackhead's voicemail, which was eventually transferred to a laptop left in Delaware for all of us to find later. Now that guy's hiding in Switzerland. Anyway, the voicemail goes like this. Hey, pal, it's Dad. It's 8:15 on Wednesday night, because that's how old senile people start phone calls, reminding everyone what date and time and day it is. Nothing urgent, just give me a call when you get a chance. I thought the article released online, it's going to be printed tomorrow in the Times, was good. I think you're clear. Anyway, if you get a chance, give me a call. I love you. I have no idea where I am. Now, end quote. The last part I might have added, and I ended the quote a little too late. Regardless, that sure as fuck sounds like to me in reference to the New York Times article that was released where Hunter was doing business with Chinese oil. Now, Chinese oil, that's not like guns or bang bang soldiers on a boat coming to shoot me. Why do I really give a fuck? Why is that a big deal? Why should I be mad that this young crackhead just trying to get money? Why should I be hating on his game? I shouldn't be mad at Hunter Biden for getting money from a Chinese company just because he's the president's son. This is America. You get it how you get it. Get yours. All valid points. All very legitimate, balanced, measured points. However, it is a tad bit concerning to me, and I would hope it would be a tad bit concerning to you, to have the president so comfortably buddy-buddy with China, and not even because he really needs to be, because the fucking country of China has his son by the fucking nads. All but literally. Who knows if they have copies of what's on the laptop? They're just, an oil company in China is giving heaps of money to a fucking painter. He's not drilling or finding extra oil. What the fuck do you think he was getting money for? What the fuck would Hunter Biden be there for? To do paintings for the new offices? That doesn't make fucking sense. Factoring in now, we do have a very, very imminent third world war on our hands. And I say that not to drum up fear, not because that directly gives me more listens, and again, I need more of them. I say that because literally Russia's saying that. There's a fucking head Russian, Andrea Mikheyev, dumb Russian face, someone in Putin's army, one of his right-hand men. I'm not going to bother to learn their names because their names are fucking scribble nonsense. And if that's harsh, don't be the one starting a world war. But a very high-ranking guy in Russia's army basically said, not only is nuclear war coming, we already have the plans drawn up, and London will be the first city we launch them on. So they have plans cooking. This is the same country, Russia that has recently entered a partnership with China. And I can promise you and guarantee you, with every bone in my body, those Ruskies have gotten had. That partnership is not a partnership. It is a Chinese win. Eventually, China will be taking over Russia. Russia may not know that, but that will happen. Now, let me walk you back to my original point that we have Joe Biden denying the fact that he is very much aware of the situation happening in China involving his son and the selling of influence and favors. Now, he may be senile. He may fall off bikes. He may misremember a lot of things, indirectly have supported apartheid and passed a crime bill that locked up minorities disproportionately. All of those things notwithstanding, he's still the president. He's still the commander-in-chief. He's still the POTUS, the top gun, the head honcho, the dude in the White House. He's still the president. He's still the leader, the guy in charge of the world's largest army. Now, and I know it's a novel concept, but the guy in charge, regardless of how you feel about him, is the guy in charge. So we should act accordingly and get on board, because there are some threats. In fact, I can think of two pressing ones that rhyme with China and Russia that want to take us out, that sense weakness, because that's what an enemy does. That will never be solved, so grow the fuck up, and now what's next? And what's next is the commander-in-chief currently is okay with his son being manipulated by the spy chief of China, whose name is Patrick Ho. And I wish, and I know it sounds like I'm kidding about that last part, but I'm not. Patrick Ho certainly is a hoe. Whining and dining crackhead hunter over in the mainland for a few packets of Szechuan sauce. Meanwhile, Joe momentarily has moments of lucidity in which he realizes his son is currently enthralled in a web of Chinese lies that involve oil, influence, and money. There's a world war. He's the guy in charge. He's losing his mind, and when he does have his mind, it's completely apologizing for his crackhead son. That ain't great. It ain't a good look. That's all. Now, politicians lie. Politicians forget what they said and then contradict it, and that still counts as lying. But what I don't think is excusable within bounds type of dirty play that we should accept from politicians is the fact that their sons might be involved in espionage in China. Okay? For the love of God. Not a good move, not a good look. We're worried about a war. We got Joe at a podium saying, by the way, NATO, Russia, go fuck yourself. We're sending all of our best guys, so you have several months to prepare and get all your missiles pointed in our direction. But also, China, by the way, don't go near Taiwan, because we'll fight you over that too. But also, as soon as I get off this press conference, I need Patrick Ho to call me, because what did Hunter do now? This is a compromising position. You never want to be in a compromising position unless you know the safe word, and I'm with your mother. Not good, not a good look at all. And it's not, and I really do hate, I hate sounding like a guy who is just blossoming into a young talking head on Fox News, because I'm not. I would have turned down a red-eye appearance just because it's something Tim Dillon went on. But the alternative, like if Trump was the other option, and I often found myself, just because the nature of my personality is I want to literally upset you, I would find myself kind of defending the guy. He was kind of funny. He said great things, and he described words seemingly at random and applied them to inanimate objects for no reason. Look at this desk. It's the best desk. It was hilarious. However, turns out he's also a sociopathic criminal willing to allow people to die. If you're following any of the January 6th committee, these hearings have begun, and I have firmly gone from thinking like Trump is an idiot who probably doesn't really understand just how bad the implications of his childlike antics are, what it actually means for the precedent set, to now I think he's legitimately someone who should be arrested and locked up. He is fucking nuts too. So the alternative wasn't much better. The options were this guy, Trump, who at one point during the events of January 6th tried to strangle and grab the wheel of his driver who refused to take him to the riots happening. That's real. That was mentioned during the hearing. And the hearings have been full of crazy turns of events, which is, not surprising considering they hired a television producer. But also, if there's going to be an insurrection, I kind of want it to be as dramatic as possible, because ultimately they didn't do much, which is good, to be very clear. That's a good thing. And I'm not downplaying what they tried to do at all. You best believe if Nancy Pelosi was nearby, she would be, a victim of that thing they did in the Middle Ages where they tied all your limbs to a horse cart and they just fucking went. That's serious. That would have happened, but it didn't, thank God. However, the mysterious circumstances continue to pile up regarding January 6th. The first big reveal, at least to me, and it might have been more obvious to some others before it was to myself, which is something that doesn't happen often, is just how fucking criminal Donald Trump was. He was, for at least 24 to 48 hours, completely unaware of the concept of a law or just manners. He was fine if Pence got hung because he wasn't a good foot soldier. He was almost strangling drivers of cars that were moving while he was in the back seat just because they wouldn't take him where he wanted to go. There's more than a lot of hints that he's currently trying to intimidate witnesses. These are the things that are really bad, and this had nothing to do with Russia. However, Russia is a threat for a different reason right now, altogether anyway. But now, and this isn't even factoring in all the crazy shit that I care about, because let's talk about the FBI's influence on January 6th. Sure, the events that happened were serious and should be prosecuted, and Trump is a lying piece of shit and a criminal, but the FBI still had people in the Proud Boys who were instigating. They still had people texting them real-time updates as to what the mob was doing. They were still taking direction. What is that all about? And now, another thing that just seems to be a little weird is just how many Capitol police officers that were working that day have committed suicide or died. 4 have committed suicide, and 1 recently died after long suffering with cancer that no one knew he had publicly. Which is interesting when you're a federal government employee, too, because I would imagine they would be pretty aware of your medical records. But what happened January 6th was wild for a lot of reasons, but to me, it was wild because I don't know who wanted what to happen at this point. It's like with every new bit of information, it becomes increasingly more fucked. Because, and I don't think this is touched on enough, 4 Capitol police officers have committed suicide since that day. Now, is it possible they were upset? They were despondent. They felt responsible for the loss of life that occurred. All of that possible and true. And in some respect, I hope was the case and that you'd feel that level of... It would mean that they gave a shit about what they were doing. But it seems a tad bit suspicious to me that 4 people who seem to give a shit about what their responsibilities were, who, now that as the picture becomes a little bit more clear, certainly had cause to be suspicious, have all killed themselves before the hearings have begun. And the 4 that committed suicide were months ago, to be fair, so it's not the most bang-bang play at the plate. But the most recent Capitol police officer who has since passed away during the hearing is the sergeant-at-arms who was the chief Capitol police officer at the time, head fucking honcho dude, Michael Stenger. Now, Michael Stenger just passed away this past night, and the cause of death is not being disclosed officially. However, everything that I could read and find suggested that he had long suffered with a serious and mysterious and vague cancer no one knew about. That happens. Have you or a loved one been diagnosed with mesothelioma? Michael Stenger, what's interesting about this homie, is not only was he the guy in charge, but he also went on record saying that he thinks the role of professional agitators should be investigated. He was someone who went on record believing that there were people who were up to some shit, who had dubious motives, who maybe kept looking at their phone while they were sending text messages to the fucking FBI the whole time. That's an interesting thing for the guy in charge of the Capitol Police to go on record saying, isn't it? Boy, I hope he gets to say that to the entire committee during one of the hearings. Oh, that's good. He's scheduled to, so we should get to hear it. Oh, goody. There's a brand new surprised hearing that was going to happen on Tuesday. We're not going to announce it to the public for fear of witness tampering and whatnot. Oh, shit, Michael Stenger is now dead. How did that happen? It's weird the guy died of his mysterious cancer hours after the announcement of a surprise, unscheduled session of the January 6th committee meeting. That's what we call a Julia Roberts, Clive Owen situation. Do you follow me, serendipity, one time? Seems a little crazy, the guy in charge of all the Capitol Police, who went on record saying there are some people here who have World Trade Center badges on their black sleeves, died all of a sudden from a cause that most people were unaware of. He suffered from hours before the pop-up hearing. Interesting as shit. And to be very clear, to anyone listening who thinks I'm on their side, Bob, I am not anyone who is sympathetic to any of the fucking Floridian morons who went to the Capitol that day. However, me asking questions as to just how involved was the FBI, just why have 5 Capitol police officers, including the staff sergeant-at-arms, who went on record saying, what the fuck is all of this, died hours before the surprise announcement he was going to elaborate on those comments, seems a tad bit hinky, a little weird. Those questions should be probed, I would think. It's not me saying, hey, Q's back, but oh, by the way, he is. Are you ready to serve? Shit is chaotic. But there's something that seems to be a common theme through the most recent, wave of chaos with these events, is that it's sloppy. I can't tell who's doing it or who's doing what, but you can tell that the way that they do things is getting sloppy. They're a little less regard for good old-fashioned trade work, craft work. You know what I mean? Because I would think, if I'm in the CIA or the FBI and I'm tasked with being one of the modern neo-Nazis who's currently deep undercover in our espionage services, I would think if I were to propose, hey, we have this January 6th thing on our hands, what's the best way to protect ourselves? If I were to propose, hey, how about we just kill all of the Capitol police officers? That way they can't testify. I would think, or I used to think, someone high-ranking probably would have said, that's fucking outlandish. They would immediately be onto us. Have a little decorum. Are you kidding me? We can't just kill all of them, all of the people involved in the insurrection who have yet to testify. You want us to suicide all of them? And then, yes, I do. I think it would be a great plan that people would have no idea. And to boot, how about the last most important one? We'll make him die of a cancer no one knew he had. I thought that would be impossible. Turns out, it seems like it's very possible. In fact, it seems like it's happening. You shouldn't be cool with it. You shouldn't be cool with deeply unsettling things that suggest the enemies, or the perceived enemies, are actually on the same page with one another. That's the type of double think, double talk shit that is so dangerously effective, that is so common, so prevalent, that we start to accept it, that we start to believe it, that we start to hear these excuses and justifications and think, you know what, that checks out. Case in point, Ghislaine, Jizz Face, Robert Maxwell's boyish-looking daughter, Ghislaine Maxwell, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison, which is great. Now, is she going to serve all of them? Probably not. Is she going to end up suicided in jail and then on a beach somewhere with John McAfee? Maybe. I don't know if any of that's true, but what I can tell you is true is that she believes, or at least her lawyer does, that 20 years is just a tad bit too long. And that is a deep injustice. That should be corrected. Mrs. Maxwell has a deep remorse for what she has done in, kidnapping, soliciting, and taking part in the abuse of children on Kidfuck Mathematics Island. She has a deep remorse for that. That was the appeal that her lawyer made to the judge after she received 20 years of sentencing. And her lawyer went on to back up the reasons as to just how remorseful Ghislaine Maxwell is and just how good of a person she is by highlighting all of her previous charity work. Charity work including the creation of the Clinton Foundation in Haiti. The Clinton Foundation in Haiti that has a history of several people involved, arrested, and taken to court for child trafficking. That's true. Ghislaine Maxwell receives 20 years to rot in prison. Her lawyer thinks that's harsh. She agrees. Her lawyer goes back to the judge and says, listen, she's a great gal, and here's why. She helped set up a charity on an island in the Caribbean that also kidnaps children. How are you going to tell me she deserves 20 years? She is so good at her job, which was professionally kidnapping and soliciting and abusing children, that she took time out of her busy day to do the same exact fucking act on a neighboring Caribbean island, only for charity and no pay. This is someone who deserves 20 years? That's what you mean to tell me, Judge? That's the type of doublethink and circular logic that is occurring, and if you're not careful, you're going to find yourself believing. This woman, a professional kidnapper, spent almost as much time kidnapping for charity, and she deserves to rot in jail. Is that what you mean to tell me, Your Honor? Permission to approach the bench, permission to ring your door, dressed in a costume, and shoot your husband and son, if you don't agree with my circular logic. Also, monkeypox is becoming a very big thing here in America. Get your shots. I didn't talk about it a lot, but you're about to start hearing about it more because apparently there was a monkeypox outbreak this past weekend in New York City at a Matt and Kim concert.